And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Hi, I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with your aviation weather for the rest of this weekend into early next week. Well, there is a weather system, at least this Saturday, that'll continue to push across the northeast mainland with 1 to as much as 2 inches of rainfall across, especially the eastern half of the Brooks Range, northeastern north slope. Reduced visibilities, lower ceilings, soggy conditions, flood watch is in effect for this area through early Sunday morning. Meanwhile, as we look ahead into Sunday, along the Alcan border, we'll see much warmer temperatures, well into the 80s, even up near 90 degrees at Eagle and Northway. So keep that in mind Sunday afternoon. Potential for high density altitudes and needing more runway to lift off there. Otherwise, across the Gulf, IFR conditions rather extensive. There's another system that's moving in through the southwest. The YK deltas are going to see lower ceilings with rain, areas of low clouds, fog. That's lifting north, spreading up along the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, Kotzebue Sound by later Sunday. So this area will also see IFR conditions expanding. As we get into later Sunday, early on Monday, we have IFR conditions there along the coastline. Also, again, out over areas of the Gulf, just off of the coastline. And then Monday morning, we expect those lower ceilings and IFR conditions here across much of the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, in through the southwest. As the overall storm track has really not changed since late winter. We have low pressures out over the Bering Sea, North Pacific. The flow aloft now is south-southwest, so it's just a steady stream of moisture, especially impacting the western part of the mainland. Along the Alcan border, VFR conditions will be rather widespread, along with the warmer temperatures even going into Monday afternoon. Can't rule out an isolated shower, thunder shower trying to pop up, but again, most of the IFR conditions will continue out over areas of the southwestern Gulf, back down along, especially the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, in through the Aleutians, and then up again along areas of the Chukchi Sea and just off of the Arctic coast as we go through Monday afternoon. Past conditions, Anatuvik Pass there in the eastern Brooks Range. This is the area that currently has a flood watch, at least through late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. We expect MVFR conditions during the day on Sunday. Same thing at Adigan Pass. Further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill, western arm of the Alaska Range, IFR to start Sunday morning, giving way to MVFR conditions. Rainy Pass, also IFR early Sunday, giving way to MVFR. Windy Pass, a bit of a split. You'll see an area of IFR conditions along and south of the south entrance becoming MVFR. Further north, generally MVFR conditions through the central and northern parts of Windy Pass becoming VFR at the north entrance by Sunday afternoon. Isabel Pass will see VFR conditions, and extending further east to Mentasta as we get toward the Alcan border, VFR also expected. Down through the Copper River Basin, generally VFR conditions there at Tanita. And then at Portage Pass, we also expect generally VFR conditions on Sunday, though as you go further east and south of there, conditions will likely be MVFR. And then in the far northern portion of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White Passes, both seeing VFR conditions on Sunday. Looking at the freezing levels aloft, they are quite high over western central Canada in response to a ridge of high pressure there in excess of 14,000 feet. As we go further west, there is a pocket of cooler air aloft over the Gulf of Anadyr, eastern Russia, generally around and just above 6,000 feet. And even out over the Aleutians, eastern central Aleutians, tip of the Alaska Peninsula, we have a little warmer air whereby freezing levels aloft are at or above 12,000 feet. Greatest threat for icing on Sunday will be along the south-facing slopes, western half of the Brooks Range above 8,000 feet. As I mentioned, area of rain is going to be working its way along the YK deltas across Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, and eventually later on Sunday up into Kotzebue Sound and the western Brooks Range. So icing above 8,000 feet, above 10,000 feet southwest mainland, and then areas of isolated icing above 12,000 feet possible as you get out along the Alaska Peninsula and just nipping the eastern half there of the Aleutians. Now, the jet stream level winds at 30,000 feet, generally a broad southwest flow over the western mainland as high as 75 knots there along the western Seward Peninsula above places like Wales and Teller. We have an anticyclonically curved jet core up to 100 knots there, just southwest, along and southwest of the central Aleutians. At 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, we find a broad belt of winds, southwest winds, generally 35 to 45 knots, but an area as we get toward, say, the Kuskokwim, lower Kuskokwim Basin, southwest winds aloft, over 50 to 55 knots, and then generally west-northwest winds across the Aleutians in the lower half of the Alaska Peninsula, 35 to 40 knots. And finally, at 3,000 feet, we see those south winds across areas of the southwest and western mainland, 40 to as high as 50 knots just west of the Alaska Range. Those winds turn more westerly to 35 knots into Bristol Bay. So with that in mind, we do expect turbulence, rather widespread moderate turbulence possible across portions of the Alaska Range, the mountains of the Kenai Peninsula, and the mountains as you rise up out of Cook Inlet, all the way back toward the eastern Seward Peninsula, interior southwest, surface to 4,000 feet, around the Kenai Mountains, surface to 6,000 feet there in the Kenai Peninsula, and then back toward the eastern Aleutians and toward the central western Aleutians, surface to 3,000 or 4,000 feet. We do expect you may encounter some moderate turbulence during the day on Sunday.